repeated betrayal creates either permanent victim consciousness or sociopathic detachment. It's supposed to make you either weak or cruel, but your case file shows neither outcome. Instead, they found what their psychologists call adaptive discernment without bitterness. You learn to read people with surgical precision, but you didn't close your heart. You learned to protect yourself without becoming what hurt you. You learned to say no without needing to explain why. That's a level of psychological integration that usually requires decades of therapy. And even then, most people never achieve it. But you developed it organically through raw experience and ruthless self-honesty. They documented how you started rejecting manipulative behavior before it could escalate, how you began walking away from dysfunction without drama, how you stopped engaging with people operating in bad faith. You became unprofitable to predators, uninteresting to parasites, invisible to energy vampires. Not because you built walls, but because you raised your frequency, and that's a defensive mechanism they've never seen successfully implemented outside of controlled clinical settings. Here's what really got their attention, though. What made someone write immediate list S classification in your file. They found evidence that you've been unconsciously training yourself in what they call reality navigation protocols, the ability to sense which timelines lead where, which decisions open which doors, which people carry which energy signatures. You know how sometimes you meet someone and within 30 seconds you know exactly who they are beneath their performance? You know if they're safe or dangerous, genuine or fake, worth your time or a waste of space. That's not judgment. That's not prejudice. That's pattern recognition operating at speeds that bypass logical analysis. The Masons found documentation of you making these rapid assessments and being proven correct with uncanny consistency. You predicted betrayals months before they happened. You sensed opportunities that seemed random but turned out to be pivotal. You avoided disasters that only became obvious in hindsight. They ran probability analysis on your decision-making patterns, and the numbers don't make sense. You're operating with success rates that exceed chance by margins that suggest either massive pattern database in your subconscious or something they really don't want to put in writing. Direct intuitive access to information fields beyond normal sensory input. Now, we're getting into the part that made your file get passed up the chain. The part where the language in the reports gets careful and clinical because the implications are uncomfortable. The Masons found what they call synchronicity clusters around your timeline, moments where reality seemed to bend in your favor, not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. Resources appeared exactly when you needed them. People showed up precisely when you required that specific knowledge. Doors opened right as you were ready to walk through them. Now, they'll never call this what it actually is, because that would require admitting that consciousness interacts with reality in ways their materialist models can't explain. So instead, they use terms like high-probability coincidence events and statistically anomalous beneficial outcomes. But you know what you experienced. You know those moments when the universe itself seemed to conspire in your favor, when the exact book you needed fell off a shelf, when the perfect stranger said the exact words you needed to hear, when the timing of events lined up with impossible precision. They found patterns of this happening around you with frequency that their analysts flagged as requires investigation because it suggests you're either incredibly lucky or you've figured out how to surf probability waves most people don't even know exist. Your file also contains analysis of what they call your influence radius, the way reality seems to shift in your immediate environment. when you're operating in certain states of consciousness. They documented reports from people who spent time around you during your transformation periods. Interviews with individuals who noticed something different about you, testimonies from those who felt their own awareness shift just from being in your presence. This is where the reports get really interesting because they found a pattern. People around you started questioning their own narratives, started seeing through their own illusions, started making changes in their lives they'd been avoiding for years. You weren't teaching them anything directly. You weren't giving advice or guidance. You were just existing in your truth so thoroughly that it created a kind of resonance field that activated something dormant in others. The Masons call this unconscious transmission of transformative states, and they found it documented across multiple independent sources. People who didn't know each other all reporting similar experiences after significant interaction with you. You became a catalyst without trying, a mirror without intending, a frequency that other frequencies either harmonized with or rejected violently, and that's a rare enough phenomenon that it gets you flagged for observation. But here's the element that really sealed your List S classification, the piece of your past that made intelligence analysts recommend ongoing monitoring. They found evidence of what they call accelerated timeline collapse, your ability to compress years of normal development into months or weeks through sheer intensity of focus and willingness to face everything most people spend lifetimes avoiding. You didn't gradually heal from trauma, huh? You went straight into the center of it and burned through it like rocket fuel. You didn't slowly build new skills. You immersed yourself completely until you emerged transformed. You didn't cautiously test new identities. You shed your old skin in one brutal molt and stepped into the next version fully committed. In it, the Masons traced your evolution and found transformation curves that match intensive training protocols designed by intelligence agencies for field operatives. Except you did it to yourself without any external structure or support. You essentially ran Black Ops psychological training on your own consciousness, using nothing but raw will and refusal to stay broken. And that kind of self-directed transformation creates individuals who are fundamentally ungovernable because they've proven they can rebuild themselves from nothing whenever necessary. So what does it mean to be on List S? What actually happens now that you're in this particular database? The truth is both simpler and stranger than you might expect. You're not being actively interfered with, because the whole point of List S is that interference tends to backfire with individuals like you. You're not being recruited because people who've unlocked themselves can't be reliably controlled. You're not being suppressed because that just accelerates your evolution. Instead, you're being observed, documented, studied from a distance to understand how consciousness operates at levels beyond normal parameters. They want to know what you do next, how far you'll go, what you'll create, what you'll destroy, what you'll become. They want to map your trajectory because you're living proof that human potential extends far beyond what they teach in schools. That transformation is possible without therapy or medication or institutional intervention. That individuals can break their own programming and rewrite themselves from the ground up. You're a case study in consciousness liberation, and they need to understand it, even if they can't control it. And here's where your real power lies, in the fact that being observed doesn't diminish you because you've already learned to operate in complete transparency. You're not hiding who you are. You're not performing a role. You're not managing perceptions. because you've transcended the need for approval or acceptance. The Masons can watch all they want, the CIA can add you to every list they've got, intelligence analysts can build files 3 inches thick, and none of it touches you, because you're not operating in their game anymore. You're not trying to fit in, you're not seeking validation from systems you've already seen through. You're not playing by rules designed to keep you small. You've accessed something they can document but can't replicate, studied but can't teach, observed but can't control, the recognition that you are the authority on your own existence, that your consciousness is sovereign territory. If you were turned into any major medical branch, you would veto everything. How long would you wait for some stupid test lab? That your evolution is yours to direct. They can watch that journey, but they can't stop it. They can analyze your path, but they can't redirect it. They can classify you, but they can't define you. Now, let's address the elephant in the room that every List S file eventually confronts. What happens when enough people unlock themselves? When enough individuals break their programming and step into their full capacity? What happens when the anomalies start recognizing each other? When the outliers form networks? When the ungovernable begin coordinating? Then people will rise. Then there will be peace. Until then, there is only